Hey everybody, so I want to do a fast video, not too long. It's hot as balls outside. And you're like, why are you sitting outside? Why are you wearing a scarf then? Well, again, I like to sit outside. I hate that it's over 100 degrees. I got the fan on, but it's like all hot air. I wear a scarf. This actually is a summer scarf, which kind of keeps me actually cool in some regards. So I know it looks weird. So I was gonna do this video because, okay, I finally figured out my stacking. Okay, so I apologize for having any misinformation. I'm not an Enneagram coach. I just do this in my spare time. I'm a writer and I work a full-time job, and I enjoy the Enneagram just for, I like learning about myself and others and human interactions, okay? So I initially had thought myself social self-pres. I'm a four-wing five, social self-pres, and when I read it, you know, on the website, the Moonshine website, it gives like this description. It says you mimic type 1 and this and that, and many writers are social self-pres, and I was like, well, that just seems too easy. I'm like, well, I wasn't always a writer. I mean, I wasn't always like this. I wasn't always critical of culture, and so it was like going back. And then when I read the social sexual, I thought maybe that's what I was because of that in my 20s, that I went through this phase where I was just sort of like floating around, and so I said maybe that's what I was. I didn't really understand what it really meant to be sexually blind versus self-pres blind. So I posted this in a 4 group I'm in, and I had an individual tell me that he thought that I was not social sexual, that he thought I was social self-pres. So my initial assessment was correct. Okay. Sometimes when you get too much information and not enough like understanding, you start to like think, oh, did I get it right? Because the variance can be very nuanced as well as the stacking. But I found a website. It's called Enneagrammer.com, and it gives the best explanation of what each subtype, what it's like when you're blind. Okay, so it allowed me here to figure out that I am in fact sexually blind, not self-pres blind. So basically, those who are SX first really are into chemistry and instant attraction. Now, I would say that I've always felt in the back of my head that that was kind of weird, because I'm like, well, you can be attracted to a lot of people, but that doesn't mean they're good for you. So I've kind of always been like, well, so what? I find them attract physically or feel that, but you know, narcissists, sociopaths can make you feel that, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm with a sociopath. Like, so I sort of always, like, maybe I'm not saying it well. People who would say, oh, I'm attracted to blah, 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 like physical attributes, and then they end up with a person who is blah, blah, blah. That always kind of surprised me, because I'm like, well, how do you know you have anything really in common? You know, it's like, I really like brunettes, and then they'd end up with a brunette. And it's like, how did that happen? I mean, what if the person that you have great chemistry or great connection with is blonde? So that's always how I thought. Also, so here, going a little further, and I'm going to put this link so you guys can look yourself. It says, SX blinds will attempt to merge with people using social strategies, being more interested in meeting a person where they are. It says where they're at. I don't like that phrasing of that sentence. Sorry, it's my J coming out. I don't know. So there is a stronger sense of reciprocity in the connection. Okay. Versus the sexual being objectifying the other for an energy fix. So that's true with me, because I always I can't be attracted to somebody or with someone who doesn't, I felt, understand me, didn't have some of my interests. Anytime I was with someone that I didn't share these kinds of interests with, like artistic interests, it doesn't work. Like, I've always said, like, there's certain writers I find terrible. And if somebody was like, oh, those are the greatest, and I don't care how great he was, I'd be like, ew, no. So yeah, that's something I don't care about how good looking you are, or the chemistry, and I mean, we don't have anything in common, then that's not going to happen. And then also, less aware of energetic chemistry between two people. So so partially why I thought maybe I was social sexual is because, like, when I thought that if I can't get a group of to understand me, I thought, well, then maybe if I focus on an individual who gets me. And I had these, like, it was like when I was 20 or whatever, whatever age, I fantasized about the Ethan Hawke character in Before Sunrise for like 2 years. I was like, why can't I meet this guy? And really, it's so I thought, oh, maybe that's my sexual, but actually it's like I'm in this fantasy, and I'm more interested in actually being in the fantasy than actually really pursuing it, because, it's that thing where you come to meet the person in real life and you come to find out they're really boring, and now what do you have? Now you have nothing to fantasize about. So you got to find something else, right? So I'm drinking Prosecco. It's not wine. It's lower in alcohol, but it's so hot. So another thing says main focus of social and SelfPress, SX blinds, in other words, focus on survival in society, cooperation as a whole. It makes a good comment here about physical fitness. So it's interesting because if I can find it here, I've always been an avid fitness person. I mean, I'm not like a gym bunny or anything like that. It's very rare for me to go any kind of period of time where I'm not exercising. Like, yes, I've had periods in my life where maybe I was depressed or just not, something was wrong, so I was probably, going through a depression for me not to do this, basically put off that self-preservation need. And it says that, of course I can't find it on this, with exercising for like a social self-pres reason, my reasons are more based in a sort of a status and to look a certain way versus, say, health is important, of course, but honestly, like, it's that kind of thing where, well, I don't want to smoke because it'll make me look terrible, not necessarily because it'll kill me. I mean, I hate to say that, it sounds terrible and like really shallow, but when it said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Whereas I get the impression that those who are social sexual or sexual social SelfPress blind probably don't put as much emphasis on the body. So the idea that, I once read this website, and I wish, I get all my information all over the place, and I wish I could cite it for you. I just wanted to do this video. I didn't have everything. So when I read this website, it gave like a body type description of certain Enneagram types, and I remember it said for the 4-wing 5, it said like little muscle mass, and you get this image of someone kind of waif-like, and they don't exercise very much. They're just kind of thin and not a lot of muscle tone. And that's, again, a total stereotype, but I get the sense that that would more be someone who's maybe social sexual or self-pres blind. But anyway, there's going to be someone commenting and say, hey, that's what I am, and I go to the gym every day. So I that's what I mean. Like, they also say that, like, 2s with 1 wings generally can be overweight, because the idea that 2s like sweetness, so they eat a lot of sweets and they comfort themselves with food, and then because they're a 2 with a 1 rather than a 2 with a 3, they don't have that vanity aspect as much, so they don't care. So they again, there's going to be plenty of skinny 2-wing 1s. I mean, this is all just kind of like, giving you a theory or an idea. If you are watching this and you are, whether you're a 4 or not, I'd be interested if you could tell me what you think your stackings are, and, if you do look through this website, if this helped you, because this one actually helped me the most over everything else. Let's see, social playground, playground. Oh, okay. Here we go. Like, this is what I was saying about. Sorry. Blah, 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 sexual, SelfPress social. Blind spots. Okay, SelfPress Blind spot. Here we go. Okay, I'm sorry. I suck at editing, so you're just seeing me as I am. So I'm not a filmmaker. SelfPress Blinds have a deep belief that they will survive no matter what. They sort of, whereas self-pres doms know that the body is completely fragile and that their living consciousness depends on protecting it at all costs. Yeah, like maybe this idea that self-pres blinds view, like, I guess fitness and that kind of thing is boring and unimportant. Many self-pres doms enjoy cultivating particular hands-on skills, and others see these responsibilities as boring as well, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to link to that, and you can go through that. I mean, obviously, I didn't have a lot here overly planned out. I just kind of wanted to tell you what I thought. So that would make me social self-pres, SX blind. Also, one last thought I had. So I was thinking about, I had a couple type 5s tell me that they had this idea that they needed to like achieve certain things. Like one told me, I thought about applying for this position where I'd be head of this department, and another one had told me, you know, all my colleagues were going back to school to do this degree, and I thought maybe I should blah blah blah. And both of them know the Enneagram, and they say, well, what do you think that is that sounds very 3-like. And then I realized, I don't know, let me think about it. And what I noticed in both of them was that the 5s both wanted to prove competence. So a lot of times there's an example of where like a type 5 can seem 3-like, but their goal isn't admiration so much as just to prove their competence. And it's so funny because I feel like the 4s are sort of sandwiched between these two types. I mean, before I knew the Enneagram, I was like, I had the 3s on one side, but 3s and 5s, neither one want to discuss, or admit vulnerabilities. They don't go to those emotional places so easily, because 3s feel like emotion gets in the way and 5s are uncomfortable with it. So the 3 is like too busy, achieving and getting their shit done, and they're like, I don't have time to sit there and feel this or that. And then the 5s are lost in their, their mental world of facts and ideas, and I feel like the 4s in the middle don't get any attention. I feel like we're just like sandwiched between these two types, and yes, I have aspects of both because they're both my wings, but I feel like a lot of times 3s very often can piss 4s off, because 4s sit there and go, well, why is this 3 getting all this attention when their goals and their ambitions and their achievements are rather conventional? And because remember, when a 3 sees something, a 3 is going to say, oh, I can do that, I can do it better. And a 4 sees something and says, well, why would I want to do that? I'll do something different. So 4s are like, well, why is everyone like obsessing over the 3's accomplishments? A lot of people have done that. And then the 5, often is off in their cerebral world, and aren't they so intelligent, and oh my God, you just can't get close to me, and then blah blah blah. And then the 4s in the middle is just, we're like, oh God, and it just made perfect sense. And I don't know if there's any social 4s out there. I also feel like social 4s are, it's like social self-pres now that I finally I figured out, then I unfigured out, then I figured out, is that it's sort of like this, there's sort of like a vulnerability, I feel like, with my type. I feel like sometimes certain other types, like other type 3s, and I felt like some from type 8s, like some of the more assertive types, kind of regard me with a sense of vulnerability, like, oh, she's very fragile, you have to be delicate with her. And almost like I feel, even though I'm going to be 44 next weekend, next Friday, I feel like I'm still feel childlike, even though I'm not a child, but I feel like sometimes people regard me as a child because of that emotional kind of fragility, which is not something that I like, but it's not something I can deny is there. And so, it's just interesting because being between those two types really helped me. The 3 and the 5 really helped me, understand. I said this to a type 5. I go, you're lucky, at least the 2 types between you. You have at least creative and emotional and open and expressive people on one side, the 4s, and then you've got friendly, funny people on this other side as 6. And he's like, or you could look at it as I'm surrounded by sad people on one side and a bunch of hypochondriacs on the other. I go, I guess that's another way of looking at it. That's what a 5 would say. But so those are some thoughts I have on social self-pres. Finally figuring out my variant. Just only took me, not my variant, my stacking. My stacking. Because this website I'm linking to. Also, I've heard some criticisms from some people in my 4 group. They are not a fan of this site in terms of reading it for the description, especially for the type 4. They seem to think that they know everything about every type and that if you do this, you're not that type. And it's just people are not static. And one of the things it says about, one I will say is about the social 4. One last point is that there can be a kind of self-deprecating humor with the social 4, largely because not the same way that a 6 would do it, but it's sort of like a way to put people at ease. And it's not that I deny having elitism and all that shit, yes, I'm not interested in a lot of things other people are interested in. You wouldn't catch me, I wouldn't be caught dead playing video games. I would not, watch any superhero movies. Not because I think they're of no value, it just doesn't interest me. I subscribe to the Criterion channel and I read, poetry and I'm a blah, blah, blah. And so I can see how a lot of these tastes are perceived as elitist, but that doesn't mean, I don't want people to feel, as the social subtype, I don't want people to feel excluded. So now I'm realizing, I'm not doing it to exclude anybody. I'm not saying, oh, I'm in this club and you can never be in it. So I'm just going to be an elitist snob and you can't come near me and don't you, that's bullshit. I'm interested in what I'm interested in. I like what I'm interested in. I'm not doing it to impress anybody. But I'll share with you what I'm interested in so you can become. It's there for you. It's like, all these things in the arts, all this, writers and artists, and it's all there for you. It's like the national parks. It's there for you. It's all of us, it's for all of us. And that's really what I view it as. It's like, I'm not trying to be exclusive. And that now I'm realizing my social variant. And so sometimes that's where the self-deprecating humor can come in. It's like, yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. And it puts people at ease so they don't sit there and feel like, oh, I guess I'm really not very good, because I know what those feelings are like, especially when they come from a type 3, where a 3 is bragging, oh, look at all the awards and achievements I've got, and I'm sitting here like, and, I'm like, I've done a lot, but it's not my fault the culture doesn't value my talent, hey. Anyway, that's more 4 talk. We won't get into that. So linking to that site, long video, so it's really hot, so I'm gonna have to cut this now short. I thank you for listening. If you like the video, you're free to subscribe. I'll try to do some more, gonna do some more Enneagram topics that are non-4. I know I focus a lot on that, but also because it's my type, so I know a lot. I talk from my perspective, and when I do try to talk about other types, I try to talk about what I've observed from other types. So my first-hand experience, and me as a social 4, I've observed my own behaviors where I notice I go from group to group, but I don't necessarily feel like I fit in anywhere. So anyway, just some thoughts. I'll link to the site. Thank you for listening. Have a pleasant day.